Welcome to the K Factor podcast, where we explore the real journey behind success, the struggle, the growth, and the lessons that shape who we become. I'm Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy, director of CHYE, a nonprofit dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and career seekers build the Keli for their parnasa and a life of purpose. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the K Factor podcast. This week, I'm very excited to introduce to you somebody who I knew nothing about until a year ago, and he's crept into the CHYE world and taken us by storm. And this is Kasriel Shemtov. Kasriel is born and bred in Crown Heights. His father, Reb Mendel Shemtov, Alav Shalom, was a big community askin here in Crown Heights, one of the first members of the Crown Heights Community Council, and he grew up in that spirit, and he was involved in the business world for the past 40 years, and last year he reached out that he wants to do some mentoring, and I started sending some of our mentees to him, and they started sending me back messages. He's so helpful, Kasriel, he's great, and last year we invited Kasriel to come join our staff part-time, first for limited hours, and now, Baruch Hashem, he's here with us many hours of the day, available for free business mentorship. And he has helped tens of businesses start and tens of businesses restructure. He's saved many businesses. He's saved many partnerships. He's done amazing things here in CHYE, and I'm excited to interview him so he could share with us his journey and his secrets of where he knows where's this business wisdom come from. So without further ado, in our classic style, we like to take people on a journey, a timeline. We're gonna go all the way back to your Bacher years, and we're gonna work our way sequentially through the years, and along the way ask you some pointed questions about your business experience and your wisdom. So Shalom Aleichem, Kasriel, and welcome to the K Factor podcast.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, so in our classic fashion, especially because our target audience is younger people transitioning from the yeshiva world into the business world, and many of them have questions of how to choose their path. So let's start there. You were a bacher in yeshiva, and
Right.
at what point did you decide that business was your world?
From a young age, I always wanted to go into the business world. My father had a company, a factory, and I always had my hopes of joining. So I finished Olator Zal, and then I wanted to go to work for him at that time, and my father pushed me. And for one more year, where I went on shlichus to New Haven, Rabbi Kalmanson, Allah Shalom, who just recently passed away. That was that year was probably the best yeshiva year that I had. A lot of learning, and Rabbi Kalmanson really did introduce me to what learning is. I had a great year.
He stood you on your feet, as they say.
Yeah, but I took a hiatus from that year for many years till I started to learn again. But it was like riding a bicycle. And that after that year finished, and then I went straight to work for my father.
Got it. So as a kid growing up, your father would take you to the factory, like you grew up going there and seeing it in operation? There was
once a year by B'dikas Chametz. We used to go at night and do B'dikas Chametz, maybe once in a while, but he always kept the factory away from us.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't part of our house. Yeah.
He spoke business at home, your father? Saying what your excitement for business came?
My father was in business, was in the office, and then at night he was in the community council, or he was doing other askanas. So if anything was spoken at home, it was mostly about askanas, not about the business. The business was a vehicle for his askanas more.
Okay, so there you are, and
that remained ingrained in all of us.
So there you are. You're finished your yeshiva, and you're going into your father's business. Let's talk for a minute about working for family, because there's an interest. It's an interesting debate that rages. Yes, family, no family. How did you work that out? How did you feel comfortable working with your father?
I was very lucky, Baruch Hashem, and I was the only family member, so that made it a little easier. None of my brothers or sisters or brother-in-laws were in the business, so it made it a little easier. It was a big factory, so it wasn't a small company. So I can't really say, at times we did have differences, but it never, ever, ever came home. Never, ever, ever. If we went to work together, we got into the car, it was finished. It was not a work. The business by my father was not, I'll use an extreme word, was not an avodah zarah. It wasn't something that he was totally, like, it meant everything to him. It wasn't like that. So therefore, it was easier for him and then easier for me to separate our working relationship and to our family relationship.
So
Never ever came home.
I know
Never.
this is not your story, but how did your father come to that business?
My father had a very, very hard start, extremely hard. He would tell us later many, many stories, how he was totally broke. He used to sell paper bags. It was called Deitch paper. David Deitch, Allah Shalom, had a big hand in helping him start. It was called Deitch paper. That was what it's called. And he would pick up paper and get cars, ask someone if they could use this. If he could use their car, he'd pick up bags from one place, bring it to another, paper bags. And then he went to a customer, and one of his customers, and he says, if you could find me this particular item, I'd buy as much as you could supply me with. And my father and my uncles, Lozangazon Yisrael, actually, they didn't find someone who makes it. They actually bought a machine. They rented a garage on Remsen Avenue with my uncle Shimshon Stock. Should have a lichtige Gan Eden. He started CSSY. Everybody knows him. And they bought a small machine, and they actually started to make that bag. And then they had one machine, a second, and they built it up. We had turned into a very large factory in the later years. Very, very difficult years. My father had very difficult years.
But he's got the real American story. Immigrant came in.
100% the real American story.
Got it. So there you are now.
He lacked one part for the ultimate American story, which was he didn't have that that obsession with business. Business was not going to run his life. He would run the business, and he did not allow the business to run his life in any shape or form.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So there you are now, and you're joining the family business. What was your first role in the company?
I was very overwhelmed. It's a lot different coming from yeshiva and then going into a factory where you have to deal with workers, and then we were unionized for some reason. We were the only factory which was paying minimum wage, because everything was very complicated and very, very burdensome in dealing with the workers and the management. And like, I came in one time and I said, oh, you can't do that. And then I got 3 people, the union reps came and they called me in. And so you learn a lot very, very fast, that it's not so easy. And it's a whole, talking to a worker and a colleague and a manager is not like talking to your friend in yeshiva or in camp or a co-staff or anything. It's a totally different world. And it took me a few months to get used to that. It was a whole different world.
So your first roles were management roles?
No, I did not. No, the first month or two was just walking the floor, walking the factory, taking notes, watching what's going on, learning different parts, learning names of materials, learning type of equipment, learning how to deal with customers, learning how to deal with workers. I wasn't the manager. It was a plant manager at the time. I was never the plant manager. Never.
And again, this was a very large operation with several hundred employees.
It went from between 150 to 250, depending on the season and the time of year, and if we were busy or not busy, etc. Yeah.
So eventually, in this first phase, what role did you fall into?
So after a few months of learning, and I guess by design, my father put me into do this, they'll go there. So at the time, I learned the run of the place more or less, and then I started working on efficiencies with the amount of employees. We did a lot of cutting. We automated a lot of the equipment. Till then, the equipment was controlled by the employee. Whatever he did, that's what he did, and we automated. It was no big deal. It was just putting an automatic timer on the machine. It was really not sophisticated, and we had the machines running the workers, and we just did some automation, not costly, and production went up. And then the unions got upset because we were laying off people. Like in each department, we had 30, 40 people. We brought it down with efficiencies and automation. I say automation, it wasn't sophisticated. It's not that we put in robots or computers. It was just a simple $50 timer on a machine. So instead of the person pressing the button to get it, it would press itself every 35, 40, depending on the job. And then we laid off a lot of people. Then we cut back. We cut out we used to have a night shift, which was very costly because none of us were there at night. So we cut out the night shift. My first introduction to the real world was negotiating the new union contract. That launched me into a whole different world, which we could talk about later. Why we had to negotiate, etc. So then we went to efficiencies. Then I took control of the purchasing department. I never took over. I just managed the managers and put in input and worked with them and learned that you can't dictate. You negotiate with people, even though they work for you, even though you're signing their check. But you learn to work with them, not tell them what to do. And it worked. It took a little longer. But
explain what you mean by that. You learned.
It took a little longer, but it worked a lot better. So let's say the purchasing agent was buying something and it was $1 a sheet. And I researched it. I said, does it really cost us $1 a sheet? And I found someone who could do it for 85 cents a sheet, for example. So I didn't go over to the buyer who was purchasing millions of dollars a year. He wasn't the baby. He wasn't. I didn't go over to him and say, buy it from that source. So I implemented that for every new quote, for every new order, I want to have 3 quotes attached to the purchase order. So I implemented that, and I explained to him. He says, "Oh, we do that every year." I said, "No, let's do it each time. It takes 5 minutes. You call them, what is the price? People have updated price this way. You keep everyone honest." So that's a way how I implemented change. I didn't say I could get it there cheaper. That'll put him down. Means that he's not doing a good job, etc.
Basically, it was a human calculation in order to have a relationship.
Everything was a human calculation. The factory would start at a certain point. It would start at 7 in the morning. I would come in. I would be there before. I'd see 7. The workers are standing around because the floor people, the managers, the foreman, each department had a foreman, was prepping work for them. So you had 30 workers in the cage. We called it 30 workers there. They were waiting around like this. They punched their card. They're getting paid. Then I implemented that every foreman has to stay a half hour extra at night, later at night. And when the workers come in the morning, they go straight to the machine and start working. Don't think we didn't have a union meeting. All the union, the shop stewards all came upstairs. We had a conference. They used the time for coffee, for cake, or whatever. So that also, everything was an issue, compounded. Nothing went smooth until you implemented it.
Got it. So there you are. It's, these early days for you, and you're learning the ropes.
Right.
What would you say was your first major challenge in those years?
A few years later, after a few years, we sold the company. My father sold the company to a large publicly traded company. And it was the beginning of the time when importing started. So things were becoming a struggle, things in the sales part. Even though my father foresaw that 15 years earlier, and we started importing as well. All our raw materials were being imported. My father was the first person to bring in raw vinyl from Taiwan at the time, especially clear vinyl. Then now everybody buys the clear rolls, the ones that are kosher Pesach. Years ago, like 40 years ago, they made kosher Pesach vinyl tablecloths. That was done. Someone came to my father and he hooked him up with the factory. But anyway, so we were ahead of the game with the importing, but the factory was starting to become. My father foresaw that it's going to be a huge burden with domestic manufacturing. So we sold our company to a very large, publicly traded company. It took a lot of work to prep the company for it. For a year, we worked to be able to present, to sell the company. And they were going to use some of our space. And they wanted, one of the conditions were the union contract was going to be up in like 12 months, and they wanted like another few years added on to the contract. So we had to initiate a contract negotiation. The union, they're pretty smart, and they realized that we're initiating it, so they started to take advantage. And 2 months into the negotiation, they went on strike. So our factory had a strike. That's a whole long story. How it was at that time. I was probably 25, 26. That was probably the first time that I was really able to use my Torah education in working around strike. And Baruch Hashem, we negotiated a new contract, and we overcame the strike. And
what does that mean? You used your Torah education?
So it was in at that time. It was in the newspaper that the steel workers are on strike. It became a whole big deal. So there was strike. The street was blocked off. The police were there. None of the trucks no one will break the union. So if there's a union strike, all the trucks that pick up goods or deliver won't cross the line. So we had then a gypsy truck driver, like, remember there were gypsy cabs. So what is a truck driver? He was Jamaican, just came from Jamaica. His name was Winter, I remember his name. And I call him up, I say, Winter, we have a problem, we have a strike. I need you to bring 10 of your friends with 10 trucks to come tomorrow. So they came and they picked up all the goods, and the strike almost got violent. And then I had them come 3 times a day doing nothing. They would pull into the loading dock. Nothing was happening. Wait an hour, pull out, just pulling out. So the union was getting scared that we're moving out. They didn't check the trucks. We made a whole scene. It was an unbelievable thing. My father loved me for that. And so a whole day, the trucks were empty. But they didn't know that. And some of the people, some of the workers, especially the foremen, most of the foremen were union, some of them not, but we didn't let them in either. So no one in, just the manager and 2 of his people. No one came into the factory, even the non-union workers, we didn't let in. So nobody knew what was going on inside. To make a long story short, after about 10 days, and it was terribly costly because we couldn't build, we couldn't ship, we couldn't produce. They didn't know that. And they ended up giving in to what we needed. We put in a lot of rules in the contract. We changed a lot of things around. And then they came in and they saw everything was the way they left it. But to us, it didn't matter too much because we as owners were leaving. But it was a good trick, and it worked.
All right.
Some silly Misa. Yeah.
All right. So there you are now. So
yeah.
Your company is being sold into a bigger company. And this,
right.
I think a lot of people will find this very interesting, by the way, because
right.
This is, I want to just say a comment ahead of this. This is something I hear regularly from our people running businesses, again, because we don't come from a corporate environments. We run a certain way, and going up into a corporate environment is a very big adjustment. So tell us a little bit about, like, what that world was like, what that adjustment was, and what you learned from that.
So part of the deal was that they chose me to be the connecting from the old company to the new company, and part of the deal was that I have to be there for 3 years. I think it was 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. That was the deal. And when I came there, it was a little difficult to transition because here it was my company. I'm working for my father. I didn't answer to anybody, and now I came here, and we had to fill out reports, and they wanted to know what my degrees were, what my education was, because they had to present it to their board and the shareholders. It became a little mess. They made me, at the time, take certain classes so they could put in that I took the classes. The class that I chose at the time was sales and marketing, which was very useful, and I used some of it in giving over to the people that I'm trying to help. Some of it was really basic things. Some of it validated methods of my sales before. Some of them was against it. But anyway, so I did a lot of that. And then there was a lot of reporting, which there was a whole different climate. It's a whole different, everything changed completely from the way, and I'm not, Lav Dafka, is it better? I don't know that running a business, every business has to be run professional, honest, straight, and efficient. But I think the culture of corporate, once you hit a certain amount of business, is very important. But for a regular sized family business, there's a lot of mileage in family run without the extra red tape and everything else that comes along with corporate. Because ultimately, that company, 15 years later, went out of business themselves. But that's besides the point.
But what would you say, from your experience, something critical that they do in corporate that on the other side, in the small business world, would benefit from? Like, what was one major thing? Like, whoa, this really everyone should think of doing it. Is there anything that you saw?
There's a lot. There is a lot, and our business had some of that, but it wasn't disciplined enough to really follow through. One is reporting. One is keeping track. One is being responsible really for what your responsibilities are. Answering properly to a chain of command in a company. You know, we laugh, oh, he's vice president, or he's junior vice president, senior vice president. We laugh at it. What's your title, vice president? We laugh at it, but in the real world, these titles have a certain meaning to it that, if kept to, ends up helping not only the company, but it helps you as an individual. For example, sales reporting, manufacturing reporting, production reporting. These are all items that keep a business healthy. You don't let every single person from A to Z has to report, has to write, has to document, has to have backup. I'm very later after I'll just jump a little bit. A few years later, my father reopened a company which did what we did, but in importing only. And then I joined with him. After a year and a half, after 2 years of being in the public company, they spun off 2-3 divisions. That's what the corporations do. They buy a company, then they spun it. They spun it off their company up in Massachusetts. It was 2 bankers. They made a fortune of money, and they wanted to play with manufacturing. They made a fortune on Wall Street. Literally 2 Wall Street people, and they met me. They liked me. I think I was different than all the other people they met. They liked me. They asked me to come on, and they tied me up because they told this company that if I don't come for 2 years, they're not buying. So they pressured me, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was difficult, but after a year, Baruch Hashem, I just left. I said goodbye, and I joined my father in the new business, where we had all those rules that my father had and all of the rules that we picked up at this company, we implemented, and my father at close to 70 started from scratch a new business which was a tremendous big success. Atayar Mazda.
So before we talk about that business, so I
Yes.
understand that in the corporate, one of your big roles was sales.
Yes, sales and marketing.
So tell us a little bit about what you learned and tips that people in sales could learn from that experience.
All right, I'll tell you. As Chatoriani Masket, I'm going to tell it to you because when the company we sold to these people in Massachusetts, after a few months, we didn't get along. I didn't like them. They didn't understand the manufacturing aspect of life. They were sitting in Wall Street. They didn't get that there's workers, that there's customers that have to be satisfied. Oh, it's not such a big customer. Well, we could be late for them. It doesn't work that way because, anyway, so things were getting uncomfortable. So I warned them that if they're not going to treat every customer, whether it's $500,000 a year customer or $5,000 a year customer, the same, almost the same, with the same respect and the same on-time delivery, they're going to end up losing their business because that transfers into the employees of the company. That attitude, the boss maybe could think in his mind, I'm not going to go nuts and take care of this $5,000 customer, but to the worker, they for sure don't know the difference between a 500,000 and a 5,000. So if that infection goes into the people that work there, then it's an infection that ends up because the worker takes it up to the bigger customers, and then that's what happened. They lost, not because I said so, but that's a natural thing that happens. One of the things, a very important part of sales, a salesman, and I tell this to the people, all the salesmen that come to me, could be the best job in the world. In fact, I was so happy that when I was at the last huddle that you made with Naftali Horowitz, he told me I could come later, but I came early. I wanted to hear him talk. He was great. One of the things he said, and it was so true and interesting, that a salesman could be the best job in the world. He can make the most money. And he said that he worked for his father-in-law, who owned this big company. He was making more as a salesman than his father as the owner of the company. However, there's one caveat there, and this is something that they taught us in the company that I worked for, and it's very important. The most disciplined job that exists is a salesman. There's no job title that requires more discipline than a salesman, because a salesman could justify his lack of working and his being lazy and saying, oh, I have this customer, I'm making enough money. That is the worst thing a salesman could do. The worst. You're guaranteed to fail. And this is true. I'm not making this up. This is what they told us, and you see it. A disciplined salesman is the best job a person could have. A salesman plus being disciplined. And it's very easy to slack off as a salesman, and I know because I did it. When my income was guaranteed with the second company, and I was happy. I didn't overwork. My father started the business. I was starting to help him, and I knew that I'm going there as soon the day my contract is over. I slacked off, and it's so easy to slack off, and your bosses won't even know. Till a year, eventually they'll figure it out because you start losing customers. And anyone loses customers, but the trick is to replace them before you lose them. So if you're not growing, you're falling back. There's no static in sales. It's impossible. It's impossible. And that's also for an owner of a company. It's not only for a salesman. If the company's doing a certain amount of business and they're not growing, guaranteed they're going to fall. You lose a customer starts paying late, you get rid of the customer. There's 100 things that happens. I hope I just didn't do a Trump weave.
No, that was excellent. That was very good. You gave a very important point
there. Because I didn't want to do this. I'm going on.
How did you end up in sales to begin with? Like where I mean, I heard you sound like you were managing and negotiating. Where did sales come in?
When we sold the company the first time, they needed someone to deal to carry over the customers. And most companies, there's a lot of people, and I just discussed this with one of my mentees, our mentees, who had this issue that he was afraid he was losing one of his salesmen. And I guaranteed him, a salesman does not own, a lot of salespeople say, oh, I'm going to go from here and bring my sales over to there. I can guarantee you, I don't have a statistic for it, but I can guarantee you it hardly ever happens. Customers are loyal to the company. Very rarely are they only loyal to the salesperson. Yeah, the salesperson gives the spice, gives the, he sprachs and he has a talk with them, etc. But also, so the company needed someone to be the person that connects the soul of our company moving over to here. So I was that person, and so I was sales. That was sales. Customer service, sales, marketing.
Did you have to do outbound sales at any point?
Oh, a lot. I was on the road all the time.
But I'm saying bringing in new customers.
Sure.
Saying like for people that there's a lot of people that are in sales and they're doing cold calls. Do you have any wisdom to share with people that are?
It's a whole different subject, and we spoke about it by our roundtable that we have. What's the roundtable called, Joe? I'm sorry.
The Mastermind Roundtable.
Mastermind Roundtable. I spoke about it.
For those of you that are listening, once a month we have a Mastermind Roundtable, which is open to business owners with 3 or more employees that are generating revenue and they want to talk, growth strategies. So go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So it's a whole different segment. I'm just going to touch on it for 1 minute because it's very long. It's not something that you really want to start talking about without going deep into it. But yes, I did cold calls, but you also have to know your market. The product that we made had a very targeted, small market. There's some people that sell broader items. I tell them, and that's what we spoke about. I'll just say over what I said. There are people that sell, let's say, corrugated boxes and tape. Every company, every door you knock on uses corrugated boxes and tape. So it's easy to sell, you would think. However, since it's so easy to sell, there's a lot of competition. So it's a race to the bottom to see how much you're selling. So yes, it's easy. You knock on every door. Do you want to buy? The product that we sold were custom-made packaging, which is a unique item for unique industry. And even within the industry, you needed a certain segment of that industry. So it was a lot harder to find them. But once you found them, it was a little easier to sell because the competition wasn't there. There aren't too many people selling it. So that's a whole different. So yes, we did new accounts. We got a lot of new accounts, especially we carried that over into my father's new importing business.
Okay. Is there any exciting success stories in your sales life that you could share?
Yes, there was a certain company, a medical company, that was very well known. Not a international company. They specified in a certain product, and for years I tried getting into them. And I knew the owner's name. I got the owner's name, and for years I tried to get into them. I couldn't get into them. I couldn't, but nothing doing. I would go down to their place. They wouldn't let me in, and it became a challenge for me to get that account. Anyway, I used to go to shows, and then I walked by this booth. I didn't recognize the name of the booth, and I look at the guy, and I see someone with a badge. It says Amaisa Shahaya. I said, "Oh my God, you're this and this person." He says, "Yeah, and who are you?" And I say, "Kasriel Shemtov from Premier Pack." He says, "Oh my God, you're the guy that's trying to get me for 3 years." I said, "So why couldn't you pick up the phone?" He says, "I don't know. I wasn't interested." I said, "Now that we're here," and he liked me, Baruch Hashem, for some reason. He told me for years. He says, "If you wouldn't have came over to me and you didn't approach me by the booth, I still wouldn't have taken your call. I said, why not? You didn't even know me. You didn't even know not to like me. Like, anyway, so he explained to me, he says, I sell this piece of equipment. He says, the bag is $4 a bag. The piece of equipment is $4,000. I can't, $400, sorry, $400. I can't be busy with the dollar. I said, but to me, this $4 bag is a $4,000 bag. To me. So this is my livelihood. I said, I hear what you're saying. He says, but it's a small component. I said, you don't have to do anything. Trust me. And he turned out for years, he was our biggest, best customer, and they were thankful. And he always reminds me that you had guts to come over to me at the show. It's not my story.
Such a lesson about planting seeds for a long
It's a lesson about don't give up. Just keep on pushing, keep on pushing, keep on pushing. I'll tell you another story. When I started working for my father, so I did a little sales. I wasn't excited about sales at the time. When I learned how to do sales and when I was pushed into it, then I really enjoyed it and I did it forever. So my father told me, Kasriel Shemtov did a lot of sales, father's first company. And he went, years ago, Manhattan was divided into districts. It was the garment district, there's the jewelry district, there's the hosiery district, there's the textile district, there's the toy buildings, all the buildings, every place had their own building. Today it's not like that really. They still call it that, but I used to know every address, every place. Anyway, so he went to visit a large customer that we were supposed to get a large contract for in the toy building. And he goes to visit it, and the meeting didn't go well. The meeting went terrible. And the order didn't come through. It was a big hit. So he leaves the customer and he's in the elevator. This is a Meiser Shahaya. And he's going down the elevator. My father always told me the story. And he's going down the elevator and there's a bunch of people in the elevator and he hears them talking that they're getting like 15, 20 truck return from two large stores. I think it was Kmart and Toys R Us. They sold them a toy that one of the components were put in wrong. And these people they weren't manufacturers. They didn't know how to deal with it. And he starts listening into this thing. And he tells him, he says, I'm sorry for mixing in. And typical Yisrael, he says, I'm sorry for mixing in. But 15 minutes from here, we have a factory of 80,000 square feet. We have 5 loading docks. We could take all your trucks within one day. We could repair it and ship it out within a week or whatever. So they said, no, you don't understand what we're talking about. You don't understand. And he was saying, I'm telling you I could do it. Trust me. You don't know what you're talking about. So he said, I'll tell you what. I'm parked downstairs. Come into my car. We'll drive to the factory. It's 20 minutes. If you don't like what you see, then it's fine. What do you have to lose? You have to lose an hour. I'm going to drive you right back here. It's 1 hour. That's all I'm asking you. So they thought it was fun, and they went into the car. And they went to the factory, and of course, they loved what they saw. The name of the company was Migo. They're out of business. One of the people ended up donating to some Chabad Moistus, and so it was a relationship they had for years. So my father told me, I'll never forget, he told me, Kasriel, was lernt man von der Meister? Was lernt man von der Meister? So he says, someone not smart would think that you should go to Manhattan and go up and down a whole day in the elevators and wait for something to come your way. So he says, what you learn from the stories, you have to go to the customer, try to get the sale. Somehow you'll get the order. So that was a nice sales story. My father used to say, my father always says, you have to get out. You don't belong in the office. Get out, 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 out.
Great, a great story. So there you are, you're in corporate, and now your father opens a new company. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
The new company was, we imported custom-made cases, custom-designed cases. We weren't so new to it because we dealt with the factory already. The factory we dealt with was originally in Taiwan, then Hong Kong, then in China. Because that's the way manufacturing was at the time. All the factories were in Taiwan. Then Taiwan got a little more sophisticated, so it moved to Hong Kong. Then Hong Kong got more sophisticated, so it moved to China. And we were importing. The first order we did My brothers are gonna laugh because it's a funny joke that we had, and so I sent the sample to the factory. They gave me a price. I calculated, put in the markup, and let's say the markup with what we put in, we were going to sell the bag for 50 cents a bag, small bag. The name of the company was Bonnie Bell. That used to be a big children's cosmetic company. I don't even know if they exist anymore. They don't buy from us, that's for sure. Anyway, so for some reason, I give them a quote. I charge them 75 cents a piece. I do the calculator, 75 cents a piece. We place the order with the factory, ship it, the customer pays. My father comes and says, wie ist der Preis? Ich verstehe nicht, was Sie da geschehen. So I got scared. I thought I made a mistake. He says, if you do the figures and the way we said we're going to mark up, it should be 45 cents. How did you get to 75, 80 cents? So I showed my father on the calculator what I did. So we used to laugh. I figured wrong, but I figured wrong the other way up. But what did we learn then? We learned how much we could charge for product when you import, because we used to manufacture domestic. So then we started, and then we learned how to mark it up properly. But it's a mistake. My brothers laugh at me till today. At least we did it the right way. My father said, it's cool. So I got scared. I thought I did something in a negative way, but anyway. And then we got into a lot of medical products and
So custom packaging for medical products.
Custom cases for heart monitors, diabetes cases, IV lines, children that have to carry a backpack with an IV line, oxygen bags, all different types of medical kits, and also industrial kits. We were from the only companies that we were ISO certified. That's a very high certification that large companies want you to have. So we were ISO. We had many ISO certifications, and we were also FDA approved, because some of our products, like the products that had an IV line coming out of it, had to be FDA approved. So we were from the only companies that had all those certifications. At the time, Baruch Hashem, we had carte blanche with U.S. Customs, our containers. We were very efficient. We were very straight. We never compromised on anything. We had all the right paperwork. We had a green light on all our containers. Our containers never got stopped or searched or checked. If it had our company name. And Baruch Hashem, my father built a very, very big business. And we had our company. We were awarded, one of the items we used to make was first aid kits for the automotive industry, for the upper class, for Lexus, Mercedes, Rolls Royce. You know, I say Rolls Royce, it sounds big. They only used about 800 bags a year. The other ones used hundreds of thousands. But we were certified, so they saw our name. They took our cases. And we had we were awarded 2 years from Toyota as a secondary supplier. We didn't sell directly to them, but our name was listed as a secondary supplier for high quality and high service of our kits.
Very nice.
Which gave us a big entry into other companies, etc. And that took a lot of skill and a lot of work and a lot of time. We had a QC department, and we had.
So let's unpack that a little bit just for a couple of minutes here, because the clock is running. But first of all, importing from another country is a whole art. How did you guys get that right to begin with?
So my father has been importing from the early 70s, maybe even earlier. He used to fly to Taiwan all the time, and he has a lot of answers from the Rebbe and a lot of shlichusim from the Rebbe when he used to go there. In different places. There's a famous story where Rabbi Chazikov called him. He says, first in China, Mustama stops in Alaska. He wasn't. So my father says, yeah, in Alaska. So the Rebbe gave him a certain shlichus to do there. I just heard an interesting story, and I heard it from Posner in Chicago. I was there. So he told me he went on America shlichus. and he met somebody on an army base, and the person was becoming closer to Yiddishkeit, and he was in the army, and he was going to the Far East, and he wanted. So anyway, he was becoming frum, and he wanted a yechidus, and Posner was telling him there's no way to get a yechidus, but he told him, and the guy came to New York. He didn't care. He told him, he says, look, you'll go to, you'll when the Rebbe walks into the door, you'll go talk to the Rebbe. You just walk over to him, don't worry. And he was standing, Posner was standing on the side watching, and he stops to the Rebbe and he tells the Rebbe that he's going to Taiwan or Hong Kong, and he needs a bracha that he should be able to keep connection to his Yiddishkeit. And he told the Rebbe that I arranged that I should get the Jewish press as my connection. And Posner saw this, and the Rebbe like wiped it away. The Rebbe went like, and like that's not enough. And Posner was telling me the story. He was emotional. He says, I forgot his first name, Posner. He says, you'll tell Posner that there's a younger man, Mendel Shemtov, that goes to Taiwan, and when he goes, he should send along. He should take, and he told Posner my father's name. He says, there's a younger man. Tell him, there's a younger man, Mendel Shemtov, that goes to Taiwan, and every time Posner should send along Sfarim books and kosher meat and everything. So that's how far back he's going, my father. So he knew the ropes in China. He knew how to deal in China, etc. Yeah.
What do you wish from all the things that you learned all these years in business that you could tell your younger self? Like, what would be your number one tip that you tell your younger self starting out now with all this experience under your belt?
I hope you don't kick me off of CHY when I tell you what I'm going to tell you.
Go for it.
Business is important. This goes back to the Hayom Yom that we had the other day. Nicht Heiser und Geld ist die jüdische Reichtum. Die jüdische ewige Reichtum ist, als man ist irgendwas hinten auf Teure und Mitzvahs. Und man bringt auf die Welt Kinder und Einiglich, was hinten auf Teure und Mitzvahs. Don't be, you know what, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but you asked me what I wish on myself. I wish on myself that I wasn't a slave to making money. Now, don't get me wrong. I sent out that text, that WhatsApp to all our mentees, not all the ones that I'm really connected with. And they were all excited about it. And I wrote them back because I make it very clear to my mentees that I'm nowhere near someone you should take luchniistic guidance from. I said, I'm strictly business, so never, ever, ever take luchniist guidance from me. And I told them, Im Kolzer, go out and make money. I said, this is a very important Hayom Yom, and you have to ingrain it in your head and know that it's there. But some of them thought, so I don't have to work hard. I said, no, you have to go work hard and make money. But that Hayom Yom from last week is, I wish I still have it. I have it a little bit, I think now, but I wish I had it not to be a slave to making money. It's not as important as people make it out to be. There's definitely more important things, and it's important to have money, and people could do good things with money, and we do good things with money. But if I had that feeling, then I would have probably been a lot better off than I am.
Okay, that's great. Now, I want to finish off with 3 pointed questions, very business directed.
Go for it.
Based on things I've seen you in action with. So number one is, if somebody is in the existing business, you've become very passionate about partnerships. So first of all, I just out of curiosity, where did that come from that you became so well versed in it? I mean, sounds like you worked pretty much with your father the whole time. Where did partnerships come into your business life?
I was invested in a few businesses. None of them ended up properly.
Actually, by the way, I want to point. You once told me that all these investments that you ever did were, it was in hindsight wasn't worth the time. So what would your comments be to people about that?
Baruch Hashem, on my last partnership that I have that's still existing and still running good, Baruch Hashem, I implemented a lot of the lessons that I learned previously. And I don't blame anybody. I don't say that any of my partners mistreated me or misguided me. It was just the deal was set up wrong. It was set up, I don't regret setting it up the way I did, but it ended up being set up wrong. And my last partnership, my last investment, Baruch Hashem, is healthier than any other partnership. I never succeeded in a partnership, except for the last one.
So what was right about this one that you could share with people?
It was very, very expensive lessons.
So let's unpack that then. So what are those expensive lessons that you would share with people?
I shared it with two people, and it's very, the things that I have in my contract and that I put into other partnerships is a very trademark, and I'm not going to talk about it, just the CHYE mentee. I apologize, Rabbi Wardy, but it's a trademark, and I get a lot of compliments for it. A lot of the first time I presented it to the attorney, he wanted to hug me. So it's a trademark which I share only with CHYE mentees. So my apologies. And this is real. This is real. You know, we're not looking for customers that I'm telling you a secret sauce, but there is some unique things that over the years, and it cost me a lot of money to learn. A lot. And Agmas Nefesh, and friendships, etc., etc. I'm sorry that I'm not.
Fine. So let's talk about, I know one of the topics we did at the Mastermind Roundtable, you discussed a little bit about losing focus when the business is running well, right? That's something sometimes some people have where the business is going and there's things coming in, and then, like people lose focus. What would be your advice?
Do you mean the topic that we did, growing your business without losing control? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
That was one of our topics at the Mastermind Roundtable. It was building your business without losing control. And everyone at the table asked me, losing control of what? And I said, you name it, and that's what it is. Losing control of existing customer, losing control of your life, losing control of your cash flow, losing control of your reputation. It's about building your business slowly but surely without losing control. People spend money that they think they have. It's not good to spend money for nothing, but it's okay if you're spending money that you have. But in most cases, it's the money that you don't have that's being spent, and that ends up coming around and shutting you down. And at CHY, we help a lot of those kind of people, even though people come here and they think it's too late. And Baruch Hashem, with Rabbi Wardy's staff and other than myself, that kick in and help people and guide them. And we do a good job. Very, very difficult to grow without losing control. You grow, but don't lose control. That was our topic on our roundtable.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, this is going to be the final question. What if somebody is open, they're operating, and they're putting in the effort, but they're not seeing results? What do you tell them?
There's no 1 foot answer. The whole Torah has a 1 foot answer. This does not have a 1 foot answer, because we have to examine, and we have some people coming in there with that problem. They're sweating, they're working, and we had by another roundtable that we do, we had someone said, "What's the point in growing and growing and growing? And at the end of the day, we're hardly making any money, or we're not making any more money than we made when we were when we were a third the size." It's a very good question, and it's a long answer. And one of the things and you're a witness to this, Rabbi Wardy, is I trained a lot of the people to make sure their margins are better, their profit, not to be afraid to charge. I have a few people that I'm working with that I don't let them, they're not allowed to give quotes on work, on jobs or products without me approving the cost. And they say, but. And I insist that they listen to me. And it takes 3 months till I push them and push them. And Rabbi Wordy heard a voice message from one of our mentees, and he's telling me this and this. So I told him, Chacham, I was the one that told you. He says, I know you told it to me, but it took me 6 months to listen to you. You have to be careful on your margins, on the way you run your business. It has to be Masuda, it has to be with the Seder, it has to be organized, and it has to be efficient. You can't run a hefker business, no matter how big or small your business is. Does that answer the question, or I segued off to something else?
Yeah, again, you answered in a nugget.
Okay,
we'll sign off with this. If you're looking back on your 40-year career so far, what's a great hashgacha prata story that you experienced that you could share?
There's a lot, but there's one that's negeya. That's a message also for the business people listening and for the people that are out there having a hard time. And this is, and I say this story pretty often. At one point, we lost our main customer, our biggest and main customer. I don't want to use the word devastating because on something that's related to business and money, but it was a very big hurt for our company. We lost a substantial customer, and feeding off that customer were other customers because we did certain things for them that we were able to offer. The chain reaction wasn't good. And at that time, Ephraim Stock, who runs the business now, was with us, and he was part of the team, and it was a big Zetz. And after 2-3 months, we realized we were still working on new business, but we got a new orders and we got a new customers, and we realized that it was a ness or a blessing in disguise that we lost the account, because the amount of attention and koyach and effort that we were putting into this big customer. Look, in retrospect, would I be happy that would I rather not have the loss? Yes, but the result was that we built a much stronger company with smaller customers, easier to maintain, easier to service, easier to satisfy, and not having that cannon to your head every day, what if? And we built a much healthier, stronger, longer lasting business after that major loss, which most people would have just given up and shut down. The reason why I didn't was for 2 reasons. First of all, I've been through bad things before, and I knew we'll get past it. The second thing is I really didn't have a choice. I wasn't going to shut down. So that's so a big loss, turn it into a gain. There's 2 ways to look at it. You can look at it as a total loss, or you could look at it as a learning curve and just pivot. We had that also. Learn how to pivot, learn how to be agile in your business, whether it's switching products, switching prices, switching companies, etc. Pivoting is an important skill that we need to have, which also another whole episode.
Thank you very much. This was a wonderful conversation. I would have loved to continue, and I see there's so much more we could talk about. We have to limit our time. For all of you that are listening and enjoyed this, like CHY now 14 years in community, our number one product, so to say, is free business mentorship for people that need business advice. You're starting your business, you're in your existing business, and ever since Kasriel has joined us, our impact has grown. And so if you're enjoying this conversation and you would like to talk to Kasriel, you could just go to our website, chy.info, and fill out the mentor request form, and we'll be happy to connect you to Kasriel to have an illuminating conversation. I've watched him impact hundreds at this point of businesses, and here we're able to do this. This is community supported. We're able to offer free mentorship and also low cost packages for people that want to speak frequently And so we're here to help. Everyone have a wonderful week and a wonderful month, and we'll see you again. Yes, Kasriel, you want to say a final comment?
A kosher and freilich and Pesach. Enjoy. And like my uncle Shimshon Stock always said, if you're not having fun with Pesach, you're doing it wrong.
Unfortunately, though, for Kasriel, this is going to be published after Pesach.
Doesn't matter. It's fine. So they'll have it for next Pesach. It's a good line because that line goes for everything. If you're nervous at the kids and if you're nervous on Shabbos, you're doing it wrong. Any mitzvah, he always said this. He says, if it's getting you nervous and you can't manage, you're doing it wrong. That's a very important line.
Yes, indeed. Okay, this was a wonderful conversation. Everyone stay tuned. K Factor comes out once a month. Hatzlacha u'bracha.